So, welcome to the sixth panel of MetaForum X. Before beginning with this roundtable, I want to show you something. So, and say a few words. So, when we started to organize this event, we agreed on not to create nostalgic anniversary conference about the 30th anniversary of the MetaForum conference, but rather to create or to organize a new edition of MetaForum and focusing on what is relevance from perspective of in the present, but we thought that it is important to reflect somehow on the historical context in which the event was realized in the 90s, and so we agreed on organizing this roundtable where we could both reflect on the past and also discuss how this legacy can be relevant in our present and future. And this is also important because there aren't many materials available online about the history of MetaForums, so the first 3 MetaForums of the 90s. So yeah, one of the most comprehensive sites are the main resources is on the Monoscope site. There is also a site of the Media Research Foundation that includes a short description of each MetaForums from the 90s. And thanks to the very rich archive of János, I was able to do research so there are some materials I want to show you. First of all, this is a 10-minute mix of recordings, video recordings, which includes brief clips from all the 3 MetaForums from the 90s, edited together, and a longer excerpt from the MetaForum 3 from 1996 and its opening remarks. So yeah, this was found in János's archive and digitized thanks to Blanca from Intermedia and my colleagues from Artpool. So please enjoy.
I think if you want a deep analysis of the largest media company in the world today, you must imagine Ted Turner and Jane Fonda in bed together.
Arról szeretnék beszélgetni veletek, hogy az internet hype milyen formában érte el Magyarországot. Egy nagyon érdekes dolog, hogy ugyanakkor, hogy internet nincs, és hogyha tehát médiaügynökségek kétségbe esetten keresnek embereket, akik látták már az internetet, hogy nyilatkozzanak, és itt ma Magyarországon gyakorlatilag bárki nyilatkozhat az internetről, és nagy napilapokba, és amúgy színvonalas újságokba a legnagyobb baromságokat be lehet írni az internetről, és senkinek nem fog szemet szúrni, mert senki nem tudja, hogy mi az. Ugyanakkor tehát az internet mint olyan nagyon divatos lett. Tehát az internet mint egy elvont fogalom, mint egy metafora, egy posztmodern metaforaként a tömegmédiában ott van. Most már minden heti lapnak van internet melléklete, minden második cikkben feltalálható az a szó, hogy virtuális, vagy cyber.
During just the 6 weeks or so that it was running, it completely transformed the nature of that space. And it's remained for me a kind of a cipher for what community access television might be, which is not a studio that you visit, but a place in the street somewhere that might simply be available that you can come across by chance.
Good afternoon. This is MetaForum 3, the last one. The title is Under Construction. We always felt that we ourselves were very much under construction here in Budapest, working under somehow different circumstances. The MetaForum Conference has not really been backed up by big institutions, neither has it been organized with fancy money and things like this, and maybe it's good to explain why this has been the case. We have been trying to bring together a critical forum here in Budapest of independent people not having a fancy high-tech fair, nor having a fair for commercial interests. These things exist here. Budapest is big, and it all includes such initiatives. We wanted rather to do something different. We wanted to do something, let's say, avant-garde, if that word exists. We just wanted to put Budapest back on the agenda in the critical discourse, and well, we'll have to see what the final result will be of these 3 conferences. But it has, I can tell, for all the 3 of us here, it has been a time of very strange paradoxes, being on the one hand very exciting time with the introduction of these multimedia things, the net, and at the other hand, being here in Budapest, being here in Hungary, exactly in a period where the country had been going through a period of stagnation. Maybe one could even use the word economic crisis by now, where you see on the one hand this digital business growing rapidly, and on the other hand you see that there's virtually no money, especially not for culture and the arts, let alone something which is not so much focused on big names and institutions. So this has been the circumstances under which we had to work. Let's remember 1 year ago, MetaForum 2, where we worked on the topic of internet culture and cyberculture and critical discourses. At that time, there wasn't really much going on, but only 1 or 2 months later, there were suddenly 10 providers here, and it was just exploding. And this whole thing of having a conference and then straight afterwards seeing that the whole thing, explodes in all directions. That everyone suddenly has an email address, has a World Wide Web address, and despite all our efforts, let's say, of the previous years to get something going, it's kind of a strange situation. Now, with the MetaForum 3, we face somehow a similar situation, and I would like to come to speak now about this year's topic. The topic is content, and it can mean, of course, anything. But it has a very specific background. The background of why we choose this is that we saw that there was a war on content going on, that of course many people are fighting to get access. The access question to the net and to multimedia, to computers, is not at all solved, especially not here. But still, already on the horizon was this second phase coming up, that after you have access to what? How much are you going to pay to it? How much will you get? Will the information that will be on these fancy media, on these fancy platforms, will it be priced? Will it have a value? And how are we going to deal with that? Will it be free? Will it run through a sort of a very selective e-cash system? Or, there are various options. And the first one. The first problem we encountered, of course, is the problem of the alliances. Whose information is on what server, which net artist is working with which institution, which magazine is on what server, etc. And this has been a very panic phenomena. Directly after the hype went off, the question of the content immediately came up. And this is what we are going to speak about now, because we feel that there are a lot of tensions, possibilities, ruptures, and we feel that there's a big need to talk about these issues now. Not forgetting, of course, the inclusion-exclusion phenomena, which are related to, let's say, the hardware and even the software, the access side. Okay, so. Now the first speaker. Are you?
We want to say we encourage questions, and if anybody wants to argue,
oh yes, of course. This is it's open for discussion. What? Oh, okay. We want to start.
We had to mention that part of the history of the conference series has been that MetaForum 94 ended with a very serious discourse involving East Edge and MATAV and Digital Island. And that was what formed the premise for MetaForum 95 on MetaForum 2. And just because we're not having another conference doesn't mean that you can't argue here. We want you to ask questions and push people. If they're saying something you disagree with, please call them on it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, and you can find all these materials also in the reader. Okay, thank you very much. Now we have our first speaker, John Horvath.
Fucking day, number Wesen. Andreas Bergman.
Ferenc Gábor.
That's me. Josef Thielman. Konrad Miklós Peternek. Walter van der Cruz and
daughter. Yeah.
Access for All.
Yes. And
Slavic.
Yeah.
Fidonet, Hungary. Fidonet.
Fidonet. And
Hungarian hackers.
Cyberpunk. Hungary. Make it cooler.
Ah, I get it.
John Perry Barlow from the electronic.
Richard Barbrook. Oh no, it's Chris.
That's Chris.
Yeah. Chris Watt invented the People's Machine, the cheapest personal computer. He wanted to.
Kahneman.
Yeah.
John Warlock.
He made the first Hungarian CD-ROM. Katalin Timber.
Oh, that was the Yosha Attila in 7 languages, right?
Yeah.
No, the party.
Is this becoming a quiz?
Mark Stallman.
Yeah, Mark Stallman. New York's first venture capital.
Oh, Rob
Investor.
Rob.
Yeah, Rob.
Oh.
Pete Schultz.
That's Pete. Yeah.
And yes, this is when one part is telling, explaining the war situation.
Let's start. We have 45 minutes.
We have 35, but we can, we should really start. So I want to start with a question to Geert, reflecting on your speech opening speech from 1996. Okay. So I think this speech highly resonates with like today's issues and everything we were talking about within these 2 days. So like back in the 90s, MetaForum obviously warned of issues like the commodification of information or the centralization of digital power. So I'd like to ask you how you reflect on like the commodification or the centralization problematics from the point of view of the content as it was discussed back then, and maybe in a broader sense, like when did the crisis begin? Like already really in the 90s or later?
It's so obvious that our awareness of what was coming and of the situation in the 90s that wasn't really very pretty in any respect. Was so. Yeah, it feels a little bit. I'm not bored, but it's very painful to see that nothing has changed, right? Because nostalgia would be good if you can look back at the good old times or something like that, but you don't want to be right. This is not what you want. Like if you predict that it's all going to stagnate and then it actually stagnates, what kind of a prophet are you? This is not a prophecy. This is a very painful situation in which you don't want to be on the right side, right? Because this is not what we intended. We didn't intend. Yeah, we had a lot of very, speculative and utopian energy. This field was bursting, right? All the beginnings of net.art you can see here. The beginning of the whole chapter of the internet in Hungary itself, right, is on display here. Now that is all extremely exciting, yeah. And still, we were already then acutely aware that this was going in a very different and disturbing reality. And and some of the characters, are already there who would, and I just mentioned here, let's say the most obvious one, Richard Barbrook and the Californian ideology, right? It was analyzed there. That was a critique of the Wired magazine.
And we still talk about it today, and we know that Silicon Valley is incredibly powerful. It generates one billionaire after another, and the Californian ideology, at least in many parts of the world, is still very, very active and has made a right-wing populist techno-libertarian turn that was in fact already anticipated in the discussions we had back in 1995.
Yeah, you can reflect on that.
Yeah, please.
If not, then...
Ask another question.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question would be to Diana. We just saw a short excerpt from the work of Christina Tamblyn, She Loves It Not, which was presented by George Legrady, which is already an interesting situation, like a man explaining a women's work within this framework. But I'd like you to reflect on how was feminism or cyberfeminism reached or tackled within the first three MetaForums in the 90s, and what role, although there weren't many women participants, but there were some. What was the positioning of feminism?
I mean, one thing is that I would say I was already a committed feminist. When I started doing things in Budapest, I think for me it became clear that the label wasn't useful, and it's a set of actions and ideas. And one thing I would refer back to is that my entry point was actually Melek, so the first Hungarian gay lesbian film festival, and that's actually how I first came into contact with János, right? And that was also a really transformative moment. Yeah, so I was handing out Durex condoms for free before anyone could get them, and I did actually manage to get some hate mail from Australian, Hungarian neo-Nazi hate groups that really do. They still write like Boroki Tamás and so on. He gets hate postcards from Australia. So I really appreciate their commitment to the old media, and post.
We even got a bomb threat at the newly opened BBS Tordimozi because of it was the opening event, the first gay and lesbian film festival, what we organized in 94, right? 93, yes.
Late 93.
So, and there I would say one thing is that actually, for example, we had a lot of women presenters participating in the MetaForum. So for me, it was more like we started how do you do an east-east balance, east-west? So it was as a feminist, for me, it's not so much about just female bodies, it's about a bunch of different bodies being present. And so, for example, we had invited people from Electronic Butches. We did a lot of outreach that didn't always manifest in bodies being present, but we were really well informed. I would say, for me, I'm much more comfortable with the cloak of reformed cyberpunk. East Edge were cyberpunks. I got to be an honorary member, but for me, cyberfeminism has its issues. I'm much more comfortable being located within a broad spectrum of techno-feminisms. But for example, when we published Bulldozer, which was a book that came out of the texts that were presented during MetaForum, there weren't any women included in the book, which disappointed me and was partly why I then later with Kathy Ray Huffman founded the Faces mailing list. But there were many women presenting, but we chose not to publish already published authors in Hungary. So, for example, and so that canceled out a couple of participants like Katalin Timar, so we chose not to do that. And we chose, for example, not to publish the Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto, which had already been published in our work with the ABCD group. So there was work that we'd already done leading up to this. And so that for Bulldozer was then we focused on those texts that hadn't been published or translated into Hungarian. For me, it's the gender parity, and especially compared to other events of the time, was actually quite good. So, and I would say for me it was much more important that we have an inclusive environment where we included a lot of, for example, Tamás Boroki and said that, you know, lots of journals asked for experts. We really, like, I think when he was working with Magyar Narancs, and, you know, they treated him like the, I don't know, the intern who should get their coffee and read their email. And I think it was really nice. We had this meeting with him and Magyar Narancs, and we were like, okay, shut up, you guys, editors. Let the youngster talk, because he knows the deal. And I think it's a performative, it's an operational gesture that does something. Because by us showing him deference and showing that we thought he was the one with something to say in front of his bosses, that actually like helped him gain a better position in terms of his working situation. So, and I think that he was the one who knew, and we knew he knew. So we didn't need him being filtered through his bosses.
Just one word, which I think it's really important, that those 3 conferences were organized continuously. So Diana lived in Budapest, it was regular. So we didn't stop organizing. It was 3 years of 3 years of organization work.
I also like wanted to mention this this collaboration grew out of the 2 of you, like János and Hart, working together at the Media Arbiters Conference, right, in 1990. Yeah. And later, Diana, you joined this team. Maybe you could reflect on also like this whole process, what János just started to talk about, like how were you being in contact, because as we know, like you also mentioned that internet wasn't really existing at that time, so you were contacting people through fax and the postal service, so yeah, it was really different back then.
Well, yes, it was very important that you mentioned that the whole thing started in '90 with the Media Were With Us conference, what we did with many others, but especially with Miklos Peternak. And right after this, we established the Media Research Foundation, and it's and the intermediate faculty, and it's a great occasion to introduce Gábor Bora, who was also a member of the Media Research Foundation beside Katalin Timár, and then came the MELEG, the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. So it was quite obvious that we have to do something, and we have to act with our freedom, and there was an excellent background of the unofficial art scene or art life or cultural life of the 80s. So it was built on that experience, and that's why we could react to the zeitgeist so quickly. And sorry, you asked something more? Or?
You know what? Yeah, I'm going to double down on that, because we didn't have a real functioning office. We didn't have internet access. So we were using, like, we would get faxes at Toldimozi, right?
In the first.
I had internet.
Yeah. And then we got internet access through our outreach. We sort of got internet access through the technical university, through the sociology department. And that was with like Farkas János, Nira András, and Kelemen Gábor. We were also doing this ABCD magazine. So then we had internet access. I actually programmed one of the first websites in Hungary, just like there working with these guys. And so we learned about, like, from Heiko Edenson about the World Wide Web. So it was like a work day would be like going, like you had to get on the tram, go to one office to pick up a fax, like go to another office to send a fax, go somewhere else to telephone, and then go somewhere else to read the email.
Well, it's also very important that I mentioned this 3 years of continuous work, and recently I found my collection of business cards, and we went systematically to every place, to everyone. We learned that they deal with whatever kind of new media. So I remember that I got the information that the Budapest police, the police department has a multimedia lab or department, whatever. And immediately we went up there, and we had a very good relationship with one of the experts. And I invited to the intermediate department, and he was teaching for more than, I don't know, I remember maybe for 5 or 6 years, multimedia design. And yes.
Can I after that?
Yes.
This, we did a lot of outreach, and this was, I think this speaks to also what you mentioned earlier, is that we really tried to collect all the topics that were relevant and urgent for people here, and then tried to filter, like, you know, we went to like FidoNet meetings, and there were a lot of like hanging around in my Hungarian, just soft to notice, I wonder what they're talking about. But
it's important to mention that maybe you are not, maybe you don't know that FidoNet was Hungarian, the East Edge was Hungarian, cyberpunks, absolutely young guys, and it's extremely interesting to follow where they end up in the digital business realm. And Tamás Bodoki and all of those interesting figures were present.
Yeah, maybe it's good to mention here as well that, especially in the '94 edition, there was no distinction between multimedia, let's say the offline CD-ROMs that we were talking about, and the very early stages of what was later becoming, let's say, Hungarian internet culture. But this was already 1 year later. We completely switched to the question of, you know, with what kind of neoliberal kind of promises the internet was operating, which then kind of culminated into a much more radical and precise critique of the Californian ideology in the third edition. So.
I must correct Diana at some point. She mentioned the bulldozer. The bulldozer, the book Bulldozer, which is still available in ISBN, and
please buy the book.
Was published in '97, and in '96 we published ZKP proceedings, or Central Committee proceedings. Which is I mean, nettime, the early nettime texts. Nettime was also born in '94, right?
No, yeah, late '94.
Late '94, and it was a photocopied, bound book of texts, and it was the number 6. Right? ZKP?
Number 3.
Number 3, okay. So lots of very interesting things are still uncovered and
by the way, also available online still. Yeah. So that part, of course, from '95 onwards, you can see that MetaForum is playing an important role as one of the places where people gather within, let's say, the ecosystem of mailing lists, in which nettime was playing an important role, and then later on, of course, Faces and Syndicate and many more.
Yeah. We didn't mention, but yeah, like just as this year's edition, with focusing on the problem crisis, like each MetaForums had its own topics. Like 1994, the topic of multimedia. It initially, you imagined it as a CD-ROM conference, but yeah, in 1993, like the World Wide Web just went live, so you changed the focus to multimedia, and in 1995 the network was in focus, and in 1996 the content, as we heard. So, and meanwhile, like as this event was strongly connected somehow to the cultural or art scene, like the net art movement, which was also like born within these years of events. Also got a strong focus. And I wanted to ask János, we talked about it a few times, but I think it's interesting to reflect on this phenomenon that there were a lot of international net artists coming to Hungary, and could you please just reflect on that? How was all this received within the Hungarian art scene itself and within the academy? What impact did these discussions have on the life of the university itself, or the students or educators?
Okay, so we always had people who had, let's say, net art activity, Heat Bunting, George Lagrady, and others. And for us, it was quite clear from the very first moment, but later was formulated, that there is a difference between net art and web art, and that this was very important. And for us, it was an enormous help to make it understand to the students what this difference is, what is the design and what is the net art aspect of this. And we can use it very well in teaching for years, and some aspect even today, or even these days, these years, this is with us. On the other hand, it was a very funny situation, because we hacked the establishment in some way. Because as in your video was quite clear, that no one knew about it, and it was very typical to the Hungarian, let's say, decision makers or business people. So that's why we stopped the conference, because it was more and more difficult to raise the money for the conference. It was absolutely a low-budget organization, but we couldn't step further in terms of financing, and we were like a foreign body in this situation. So because between the conferences, we were invited for some official meetings of that time information ministry or something like that, and they couldn't understand. We proposed that they have to invest to the users, not buying content, but generating content. Because if you generate, I mean, if someone is generating content, that's for sure that this content, at least for him or her, is important, and that's why on that line it could grow organically. And we even wanted to make Hungarian access for all, but that was the moment when the elephant of Matav entered to the China store of the Hungarian Net initiatives, and they bought up content, and they bought people, and all of this Hungarian access for all, we had to forget it, and it was also typical to the audience that we have much more, I mean, significantly more international people to come for that 3 days conferences, and it was less known from the Hungarian side. So there were some, of course, some exceptions, but it was not really covered, and it wasn't really used, that knowledge what we produce, and that information. No one wanted to use it. It was a strange situation.
I would like to disagree with you.
Oh, please.
No, one thing that for me, okay, I think it's important that the event, like in '94, ended with this. I think it was '94. This public exposure of of Matav illegally reselling the Hungarian academic internet, right? Yeah. And that broke their illegal monopoly, and then that allowed for something like Közhely, this Hungarian like non-profit internet provider, to come into existence. So there's all these things happening, and here just where I would disagree is that the thing is that net.art, because it's really weird that net.art was really born out of the MetaForum series. Like Paternock was like, oh, I met this woman, Olia Lialina, you've got to bring her. So like Alexei Schuler. Yeah. So
they were all there.
Yeah. So like so that's something that it didn't really manifest in any Hungarian net artist, which is for me always like I'm curious about this. But on the other side, the Hungarian cyberkultura, right, or any like the online culture was much stronger and much more developed here than in many other places. So I would say that like I think it just took a different direction.
Yeah, I agree completely, and that's why was it such an important moment in terms of Hungary, because this approach and this technology was completely new for everyone. We were on the same level. Of course, the Netherlands were way ahead, but if you take Germany or Italy or France. In France, there were the Minitel functioning perfectly, and we were completely parallel and synchron with all of those movements.
Yeah, I want to mention here something that we haven't really spoken about yet. And that's, of course, the relation to the Open Society Foundation and the George Soros, and this, in particular, of course, the Soros Contemporary Art Network. And a lot of those initiatives were, of course, based and coordinated here from Budapest. However, there was the things, especially in '94 and '95, they went very fast, and there was no real link to their agendas at the same time. In retrospect, I was always surprised to see they picked it up later, and János knows much more about this. I'm thinking also of the big event, the butterfly effect, etc., right, which kind of looked a bit like something in this direction. Yeah, something like that, but then with money or something, and with real artists, not net artists, but real artists, you know, something like that. So it was a bit like that, but yeah, it was, and then later on in '97, of course, I think in the nettime meeting in Ljubljana, there were already more direct ties, let's say, to the Soros Contemporary Art Network. But in the background, it certainly, you know, played an important role in it, but it never materialized actually in money.
Actually, they got some support from the Schroeder Center for Contemporary Art. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. €250.
Anyway.
Yeah. So the Schroeder Center for Contemporary Art was established in 1996 after the success of the Butterfly Effect exhibition. But before that, the Soros Foundation already existed. So as far as I remember, you received like €500 or something like that from the Soros Foundation, and also. Yeah, the MetaForum series were also like part of the Budapest Autumn Festival, right? Yeah, so, and I just looked into the archival materials. So you also received funding from the ANCA, the National Cultural Fund, that still exists in Hungary, but it's almost impossible to get funding for anything. So yeah, this was a different situation, I guess. But yeah, what's your reflection on, like, in terms of funding? Was it like very similar to this year's experience, or yeah, like was there more I don't know, security behind all these organizational things?
Well, I think we were on the ground, and we just spent more time on getting the funds, and embassies played quite an important role, much more than maybe we would have liked. Yeah? But it turned out that this was a way to bring people over, which then also meant that, you know, if we hadn't had any contact with some specific country or embassy, then yeah, there wouldn't be money, and that situation, of course, hasn't changed today.
So the Dutch embassy played always a very important role, and that's why I'm very happy that even this conference is partly funded the Dutch embassy.
They don't know that.
But I remember that with Diana we went practically everywhere, and I was like a parrot because I could say by heart the whole text again and again. Why is it so important? And all the people were listening very carefully and didn't give any money, from MOTAF to lots of other organizations. And the National Culture Fund made a post-funding because we were in black, I mean in negative budget, in red, sorry. And I had to use my own money to make some payments, and that after that we turned to the head of the National Culture Foundation, who had a personal budget, always had a personal budget, and made a quick decision. So it was really, we had an enormous effort, and the result was practically less and less.
I mean, like then I would say very, very low budget, but we also had this, I think Gert and János were originally invited to do something by the Autumn Festival, which was this hangover of the basically before '89 political condition, like Mate Peter. There was, so we had we operated, there was a frame and there was a very small budget to, do things, and then we would ask people, and like I remember for '94, we got some kind of computer company said they would sponsor us with computers, and then they said no. And I don't know what we did, but we were like,
Apple, IBM.
Yeah.
That's why I said I have all of those business cards. It's a very interesting social history to go through those cards.
But János, it's also a history of utter failure. Of failure, misunderstanding, and the whole notion maybe of sponsorship, what didn't even exist at the time. And I remember it as a continuous series of utter catastrophes, and but like the event here, we did it anyway, right? And this was because the motivation to do things was much stronger than anything else.
Yeah, sorry, just one more thing we haven't really talked about yet, and after that we should open the discussion to the audience as well. So like MetaForum was not just a conference, but a kind of a meeting point for Eastern and Western theoreticians, artists, and closing some gap between these post-socialist and the Western countries, and also in terms of it included artists or people from the cultural field, but also company managers from tech companies, no, or some of them. So as far as I see, it intended to close some gap between the cultural and tech sphere as well. And I just wanted to ask you to reflect on that, do you think this whole like Eastern European perspective was until 1996 it provided a kind of a distinct perspective, but what happened in 1996, like that it became less important, or why did you came to the conclusion that not organizing any more events? Or?
Well, it was not sustainable. It's very obvious, and so we quickly came to the point. You know, either we really institutionalized this, and we're starting to do it more seriously, or we quit, because you know, the energy and the enthusiasm was very big, but after 3 years it was also clear that. And also maybe, you know, because we were traveling, all of us were intensively traveling, so we got a lot of experiences and exposure to other models elsewhere, you know, other places, and with other agendas, and so it was we couldn't go on like that, and so instead of trying to institutionalize something, we decided not to do that, and obviously by then the intermedia department had grown, and the Soros Contemporary Art network had established itself. So that made it maybe a little bit easier to decide to stop, because we knew that it would continue on a much larger scale very soon after. So it was not that we thought we have to stop.
Yes, I totally agree. I wanted just to add that if you do a research either on the nettime archive, we wrote a text very consciously, MetaForum Bueno Bye. Bueno Bye is an honor to Diana, because in New Mexico that's a usual, I mean, they say instead of goodbye, Bueno Bye. So Bueno Bye, MetaForum, and we described it, why we stopped it. And my personal point is that, you know, we wanted to share all of this thing. We were, in some sense, totally romantic, and we wanted to share it to everyone.
Even with business.
And even with business. And when we saw that it's not going, for us, it was a pleasure. I mean, for us, you can see, I mean, we learned a lot and we enjoyed a lot. We made incredible friendships from John Perry Barlow from the Autonomedia of New York. I mean, John Fleming and Peter Lambert Wilson and many other people, Conrad Becker, and all of those people. We are still in a good relationship, and we had many other things to do together and separately. So it was we were sorry. So we did it. We showed it. It is possible. It's feasible. You can easily make a very exciting conference
like this one. Like this one.
Like this one. I'm saying. And for us it was enough. And since we didn't see any serious interest or support or assistance, then we went further. We started to do different things.
That's very true.
I would like to make a small distinction, and that is because the SCCA network already existed. What happened was this, the C3, right? And I think that was that was seeing the power. Like, we had the internet operating in '94. It just didn't work very well. We had, and this was also connected to NetArt. In '94, we had a cyber gallery, which was basically, it didn't really work because the internet was too slow. But like,
all right.
Not a problem.
I'm not going to talk about the guy who cried, okay? Because the internet presentation didn't work. But it was just sharing pictures online, and versus using the internet. And so that's something else. And then I think it's important that there were like little mini manifestations, and of course, like Beauty and the East was modeled after MetaForum.
Yeah, that's
and
true. I always considered it MetaForum 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for me. Yeah. Which maybe you have to say, this was the nettime event in Ljubljana in May 97. So that was, let's say, 7 or 8 months after the last MetaForum, and we kind of continued again, you know, in the organization. But then the next one took place in Ljubljana.
And just a fact to explain the situation. In '97, we published the Bulldozer book, which reached second place of on a popular, like a bestseller in a popular bookstore in Író-Boltja, and it was founded by the Telecom, the MOTAV, the Hungarian Telecom, which is, of course, which was and still is an extremely big, rich company. And the guy who dealt with us was helping at the conference. He was an ex-journalist of Magyar Narancs, but after that he was bought by the Telecom and became quite a bureaucrat, a clerk. And we put together we put together the second volume because it was so successful, the first one. And not to mention that it's a lots of original text, and we got all the rights from the authors, like a gift. I mean, like a acknowledgement of our activity. And he said to me, plain in my eyes, that he's very sorry, but the clients of the MOTAV, they are not interested in this. It's too intellectual and so on, and they don't give. They didn't give that 700,000 forints, which were good for the which was the cost of the book. So it's just to make it clear.
Mm-hmm. Can you just give that a euro amount? That's a very small amount of money.
Yeah. Exactly.
Ah, yes, sorry, I forgot it.
It's open.
Are there any questions from the audience, maybe?
Yeah, I would like to ask you about a little bit more about this very sensitive moment and the distinction you mentioned, heard about the Open Society Foundation. And this is what they try to support, this, let's say, art, like you said, real artists and real art, and not that's part of, that something was start to exist, and it could be like a, what is behind? Because I can imagine that it's like a local situation that people didn't understand or didn't want to understand, but there's also could be like a very systematic thing that behind of the decision was like a very long-term program to combine the new liberal open society together with the art, which is the market art base. Yeah,
exactly.
And that's,
you already answered the question. Yeah, that's precisely it. And I think the fact that you know, the net art was questioning itself, was actively undermining itself by questioning, you know, the real, let's say, production motive of becoming a successful commercial net artist. That was a paradox in itself, and I think it still is today. And so this is an issue, and of course you could say, okay, how did the conceptual artist back in the 70s did that, right? Why did they become very successful in selling, let's say, hot air, literally, like, and you could sell that. You could put the hot air in a box and you could sell that box, and now it probably would be worth, what shall we say, $50,000 US or maybe more, if you would have a box with hot air filled up in the 70s, but something like that, right? So this is a completely conceptual idea, but of course 20 years later, when net art started to become this whole mechanism was already deconstructed and reflected upon, right? And so the idea was already kind of meta-conceptual and doomed to fail as a successful, let's say, trend or whatever, right? And now, of course, all these artists they are fine. Olja is fine. Vuk is fine. They're still alive. Huh?
That's fine arts.
Yeah, fine arts. They're doing fine. But yeah, but this was not the point. And of course, this was very different from, let's say, the installation artists and the multimedia artists who were strictly offline and who were very interested in selling tangible art, namely either CD-ROMs or videotapes or installations or prints that could be on display in museums. That's my take.
I mean, I think in general, what I think that this, like, especially what you see in the difference between butterfly effect and MetaForum, was this very, for me, a neoliberal drive towards the professionalization of the arts. And then you have the introduction of the sort of arts management. And like, we were like the dirty punks, you know, like, yeah, like we're having fun. Like we had, you know, lots of parties. Like János and I spent a lot of time stealing office supplies from the people we visited. So he talks about the business cards. But I mean, yeah, just stickies, pens, you know, stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
as you do.
In a way, like, so there are things that, you know, in order to, I think, basically in order to be complicit in our own the corrupt process of getting sponsorship. So these things, and it's like, I think having like a different attitude to things, and this is something I would really push, like for younger people, is this, like the pressure to professionalize, the pressure to operate on a certain, like a level, because that's again this sort of thing that I don't understand. Like for me, you know, just like when you're young, I think you should be crazy and enjoy it, and I'm now like, okay, I think I have to continue just that the whole time, my whole life. But there's such an extreme pressure on young people to perform and to be like hyper normalized, and I think that's something to resist.
We refuse that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a question from me. Sorry, it's gonna be a very naive question, but I think it's interesting. Diana already mentioned for the young people, it's quite a lot of them here, and I really see that there is this element of like different generations coming here and being maybe, at least me, inspired by seeing all this work and the legacy. So I'm just curious, what is your wish for the younger generation of artists, curators, emerging researchers, moving on, like, yes?
Well, for me it's one very clear, and we're going to talk about it at the very end, and that's the art of self-organization. Because coming together, creating bonds, networks, friendships, and doing that, of course, obviously, you know, outside of the dominant now social media platforms, but creating your own infrastructures. So that would be my message.
Yes, I completely agree. I would put it in different terms. Maybe you've heard about this Italian term, sprezzatura. Sprezzatura means that you do something, you don't show the difficulties, you don't refer to the difficulties, the heavy childhood, being romantic and forming a community, even if it's just small, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, like we did with the media research, and start to move in one direction, like we would have a lobotomy and don't care about what others see. It sounds really very traditional or very very common, but that's it. I mean, don't think about the problems. This is a different level of reality. especially if you remember yesterday, reality now is absolutely questioned. Do we need reality? This is the big question. Do we need reality at all? What is reality? And so on. That sprezzatura.
I would say there's a lot to be angry about. Embrace it in order to get powered up for love and resistance.
Thank you.